Is the anti-gun lobby correct? Does the fact that Americans have so many guns beget the rise in gun violence we are seeing today? Join me as I debunk the gun control agenda that hides the truth about guns and gun ownership in America in this episode of Office of the Patriot. Hello, and welcome to Office of the Patriot. In this office, I try to make sense out of the nonsense of the progressive left. If you are a subscriber, thank you for your continued viewership. It is appreciated. If you are a returning viewer, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future presentations. And if this is your first time to my channel, well, congratulations on finding it. It's usually buried in obscurity by the YouTube algorithm. However, I hope you find the content worth coming back for. My name is Myron Ybarra, and I'm your host. Today's episode is going to touch on some of the reasons the anti-gun lobby pushes their narrative that guns should be banned in the United States today. Now, many of the people, to include our current president, bumbling Joe Biden, will assert that they are not trying to remove Americans' right to bear arms. However, they have no qualms at chipping away at the Second Amendment in the name of safety to get the Second Amendment to a point where only a select few, namely the elites, would get the right to maintain a firearm for protection. And to hell with the rest of us. Trying to find the primary argument the anti-gun leftists use to support their position has been a huge task. And that's because there are so many arguments that they put forth to neuter the Second Amendment. And as a result, I had to try to select the most prominent ones. So, if you have an argument for or against the Second Amendment that I have missed, please take a moment to comment below. Line number 1. The Second Amendment is not an unlimited right for Americans to own firearms. The anti-gun lobby goes as far as quoting the Heller decision, claiming that the Honorable Justice Scalia codified this by noting, like most rights, the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. Unfortunately for these leftists, they fail to continue reading the part of the opinion that completes the sentence, because our laws already have prohibitions in place for possession of firearms by the mentally ill, possession of firearms by convicted felons, and possessions for carrying firearms in certain places like government buildings, jails, and prisons. The Heller decision went on to note that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to possess a firearm unconnected with service in a militia and to use that firearm traditionally for lawful purposes. That means Americans' right to possess a firearm is not linked to any type of service to our government. So if the Second Amendment allows for Americans to have firearms when they're not in service of the government, then it stands to reason that Americans can use firearms in and for other lawful situations where they believe they would be needed, like in sport, while hunting, and in defense of themselves, their property, and others. Line number 2. More gun control laws to include mandatory background checks, assault weapons bans, and bans on high-capacity magazines would make us all safer. And here's the problem with this line. The premise behind this would have to stem from the idea that law-abiding citizens are the ones that are committing the crimes. This is because people who acquire firearms unlawfully are not concerned with background checks or assault weapons bans or magazine bans that law-abiding citizens are saddled with. This lie proposes that a law-abiding citizen would go through the process of a background check, pass it, acquire the gun, and then turn around and use the gun unlawfully in the commission of a crime. This is akin to the magic bullet theory that was proposed in the assassination of JFK. Further, in cases where criminals unlawfully acquire firearms and then commit crimes with them, the illegal possession of a firearm or illegal possession of ammunition magazine charges are usually run concurrent with the primary controlling case. Either that or those charges are pled out. It's only when these illegal possession charges are the only charge that they are made to stick and carry substantial penalties. And who do you think the victims of these substantial penalties are? Law-abiding citizens, that's who. Lie number 3. Good guys with a gun rarely stop a bad guy with a gun. This lie, however, is bolstered with stats that less than 1% of victims protect themselves or others with a firearm. However, this statistic doesn't paint the whole picture. If you were to extrapolate this over a decade, you would have over 500,000 private citizens preventing what could amount to millions of dead Americans. And I don't know about you, but I don't believe those are small numbers. But in reality, the whole picture is actually harder to quantify, because there are so many anti-gun laws on the books today that prohibit law-abiding citizens from carrying a firearm in public, which may have been able to stop that bad guy with a gun. We really don't know how many people could have been saved by the presence and action of a Good Samaritan with a firearm. There's also a chilling effect on Good Samaritans that leftist government officials and prosecutors employ to reduce the desire for a good guy with a gun to intervene when he or she sees a crime in progress. They charge the Good Samaritan as opposed to charging the criminal. And you're seeing this played out right now in the Daniel Penny case, where Daniel Penny acted in defense of himself and other passengers on a New York City subway, and the liberal press has all but found him guilty of murder and sentenced him in the court of public opinion. Lie number 4. Countries who have outlawed guns or have very restrictive gun laws are safer. And I've heard this claim on more than one occasion, normally by leftists who cite Switzerland and Finland as their example. What they don't tell you is that the numbers are exceptionally close when you look at population. Both Switzerland and Finland incorporate firearm ownership into their culture. Children as young as 10 years old are taught to shoot. Firearms are not vilified, but instead embraced, and firearm safety is taught early, so the mystique and thus the allure of firearms to children is reduced. Further, anti-gun advocates never bring up the countries who have banned or have severely limited private gun ownership. These countries also have some of the highest firearm homicide and suicide rates in the world. The left will cite the highest total gun deaths, where the United States ranks 2nd or 3rd, but fail to include that most of the countries that have higher homicide rates per capita are also countries that have the strictest gun laws in the world, like Mexico, Venezuela, and El Salvador. As I said at the start of this presentation, there are many more lies that the left perpetrates to promote gun confiscation. They won't say that outright, but that is their end goal. And all 2A proponents know that a disarmed society is significantly easier for government to control. Firearms have never really been a problem in the United States, and they didn't start becoming the scapegoat of our society's ills until other aspects of our society started to falter, like education, the rule of law and consequence, the nuclear family, and the belief in a higher power. When core values of a community start to falter, like the listing of a sinking ship, some try to right the ship by removing the dead weight. In this case, it's the removal of our right to keep and bear arms. To them, firearms are the reason for the decline, for the sinking of this great nation, and not a symptom of it. The truth, however, is the Second Amendment isn't dead weight. It's what keeps this great nation afloat. Well, that concludes today's presentation of Office of the Patriot. If you enjoyed what was presented, please take the time to like, subscribe, and share my channel on your social media. It is appreciated. And as always, have a great day and stay safe out there.